I can begin.
I think so, Piera. Yeah, we have people joining, and if you hear it, just
record.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name is Piero Formica. Oh, what's the name? And this short discussion is about a new essay I have publishing called the Sciencepreneurship, which means a symbiotic relationship between science, entrepreneurship, and sustainable economic growth. So it's very easy to understand that we live in volatile times, and which implies interconnected crises. So we live in uncertainty, disorder, confusion, inaccuracy, and what they say, crazy hours, which is exactly my watch I have now here with me, my wrist. To understand how does it work, you need the new eyes. Marcel Proust, in the remembrance of things past, said the real voyage of discovery consists in having new eyes. In the past, Sextus Empiricus was a famous Greek philosopher, used to say, we should be trained, or we are trained, to live in the certainty of uncertainty. And he stressed the point, this stance situation, to combine science and entrepreneurship, and together with the nature, Usually we say made in Ireland, made in Germany, you say in US, in Italy, and so on and so forth. But not so oftentimes you used to say made in science, which is not a country. Science is not a country. And this implies, made in science, implies an outcome of a co-evolution of science and the entrepreneurial community. And this is a longer-term process. Strengthening was the things hidden beneath the standard of knowledge maps. The image you see represents the famous painting by the Dutch painter, Flemish painter, Vermeer. He's the geographer. The geographer is not looking at the globe or the map, he's looking outside. He rejects the maps, he rejects the non-knowledge. He looks at what's discovered new paths. And I wrote these slides, look like the Flemish innovator, the influential cartographer, a cosmographer, Gerardus Mercator, who depicted the outside world, that world beyond the typical experience, which had been precluded from view before him, thus paving the way for long-distance trade. So, leave your maps at home. Science is different from made luxury. The made luxury has been studied by the famous sociologist Veblen. Higher the price, more I buy. But this is a so-called snob effect, which is a sort of disparities. Income disparities, wealth disparities. Less people are richer, less, but more and more richer, more Ferrari are sold. Whereas sciencepreneurship is essentially inclusive, so the normal demand, price, quantity curve. The price goes down and the quantity goes up. We need more medicament, and we need more people who are engaged in the environment, and so on and so forth. So the demand curve with the law of demand odds. Whereas the luxury good is vice versa, So once we say made in a country, and then we have the luxury like in Italy, pay attention. The sciencepreneurship, I used to say it's intellectual light. The source, Martin Carr and myself, we have called this source knowledgeification, sort of a high voltage knowledge current. It's the knowledge in action. And the basic research and applied research, they live together. Historian of science, Stephen Shepard, used to say, the presumption that applied research and development require less brain power than pure research is simple dogmatic. So sciencepreneurship is the encounter of industry-oriented scientists and science-oriented entrepreneurs. The orientation of this company, the science-based companies, is holistic, since they are concerned with the social and economic community as a whole in which they operate. It's a heuristic, it's a bottom-up learning approach. Each member discovers things from herself, himself, and learns from experiences gained from experiments. Lab for experimenting sciencepreneurship is moral, which means high standard of fairness and honesty shape the behavior of individual and the enterprises. Sciencepreneurship embraces activist capitalism, adopts ethical traits, fundamental missions, taking action to reduce inequalities, doing what is sustainable for the planet, serving, protecting the wild nature, and giving a voice to nature. I refer to my book published by the University of Chicago, both in English and in Italian, since I'm Italian. The book is called The Nature Voice, or La Voce della Natura in Italian. In the sciencepreneurship, it's good to see the tree up-down, since the roots are important, the roots of the culture. We don't see this in real life. We see the fruits, and the roots are not seen. We can't even imagine the roots. So the roots are featuring the culture of sciencepreneurship, the culture I mentioned before. And when the culture wants to be a gene of evolution, it travels the whole orb of science. Famous philosopher John Battista Vico from my country. He said, in science, there are no boundaries between humans and the non-human world, between imprint of human power on the planet caused by geological forces. The restless spirit stands at a crossroads between the Republic of Letters and the Republic of Science, drawing on those golden resources that are new insight and new understanding. Which means transdisciplinarity, fusion of different sciences, not multi-oriented. It's a fusion, like a fusion in the atomic energy. This happened in the past. In the 1700s, 1600s, in Europe, there was a common language, it was Latin, and a common culture, humanity and science together. And this Father Nicholas Cullen from Maine University, famous theologist and famous scientist in physics. He invented the induction coil, which was the origin, one of the origin, the source of the Industrial Revolution. Okay? We have missed it in some way. We have to recover this orb, unique orb of science and entrepreneurship. So interconnected crisis means interconnected networks. Scientists, humanities, entrepreneurs, investors share the three Plotinian means it was a Greek philosopher, characteristics of knowledge: science, intuition, and opinion. In my book, my essay, I treat all these scientific enterprises you see in the list. And at the end of this short discussion, what we need to be engaged in sciencepreneurship? We need to control the sloppiness. This is a famous expression by the microbiologist and Nobel Prize Salvador Luria, which means improvisation, contradiction, combine logic and intuition, exploring the experiences. think about the Flemish and the discovery of the medicament for so many diseases. Whereas in the usual managerial companies, we are concerned with accuracy, diligence, scruple, zeal, efficiency, and so on and so forth. We want to be precisely wrong, then quasi right. Sciencepreneurship and the managerial usual normal entrepreneurship. And another point is to mix together, make poly, in Latin festina lente, and run as fast as you can, more like in the Lewis Carroll. Making haste slowly was an expression by the Emperor Augustus. He said that we need to combine the promptness of action with slow pace of careful consideration. Festina lente, make haste slowly. In the famous Lewis Carroll, Alice, the queen said to Alice, if you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as them. So in sciencepreneurship, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this expression is typical of the sciencepreneurship, go together. In the appendix of his presentation, you have some consideration about these companies. I don't have time to do this, you can read, but I leave you with a question mark from the New Yorker. This cartoon, a great cartoon in my mind, the smarter we make the AI, the less it want to do our jobs, which means if we don't think we are lost. A Professor Skinner, a famous psychologist, said, whereas we are so concerned about how the robot can learn, we humans, we continue to learn, yes or no? So, at the occasion of the Christmas wish, I wish you, as I used to say, Cicero motus animi continuus, which means perpetual effort of mind and Merry Christmas. These are my 50 minutes. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Piero. I won't chance the language. I'll just say Merry Christmas back. Excellent. And thank you so much, Piero. I can now ask anyone online or in the room, any questions or comments for Piero, and thanks to everyone that's joined online. Anyone with any questions or comments are welcome.
I have one question. Piero, if you were to, have some way to implement these ideas, where do you think it should be? Is it as a society as a whole, or do you think we need to rethink maybe how we teach certain disciplines within, third level or in school?
In 1 second, I would say to be trained to participate to the exercise of yesterday. Experimentation. We experiment in science, we don't experiment in humanities. Mm-hmm. We need to combine humanities and science together and make experiments like yesterday. Second point is to revolve the usual way of thinking about the today universities, which are driven, professor driven. I teach, you learn. I say to you, 2 times 2, answer 4. So the answer are much more important than the questions, whereas the questions are more important than the answer. Otherwise, Einstein, bye-bye. So I need we need the revolution in some way, in some universities is moving toward this direction. Unfortunately, to my mind, not in my country. And the experimentation where humanists and scientists, they merge together. Mm-hmm. We are doing this in the contamination lab in Padua, thanks to the IVI yesterday here. And I think it's the way to move from made luxury for stupid thing to buy to made in science, which means the survival of the humanity. Otherwise, not my son, your nephew will burn like the potato, fried potato, due to the climate situation. I give you an example. In economics, everybody studied the GDP. The GDP is a metric, has been invented by Professor Kuznets, immigrants from Eastern Europe to the States during the Great Depression. At that time, the GDP was a humble calf. Nowadays, it's a tyrant, it's a big lion, a big tiger. And everybody think about the GDP. Now, Paul and myself, we are the owner of a beautiful wood. There are the pollinators, there are the herbs, there are the trees, 3 big services, air, fertilization, and the pollination. But the GDP doesn't measure these services, 0, nil. But Paul and I, we replaced the wood with a great building, Dubai building, okay, or a Doha building. You imagine the GDP, and the nature died down. So if we know that we need to change the metrics. In the business school, to me, might be the disaster, if there is a disaster, is that there are no labs, not experimental labs. They have case studies, good, but the case studies, they do reflect the past. For so many years, and not only in my country, the famous milk factory called the Parmalat was considered a great case of success. So there is a need for jumping, for challenge the uncertainty, not using the metric uses so far, and this metric are not good for the humanities. This is the result, the outcome. So it's a revolution, but the revolution, we know, big question mark.
But that's probably the reason why it doesn't happen or why it happens so slow, because we have very quantifiable measures also in the schools. It's marks, it's percentages, it's like when you actually have an answer to that question, 2 + 2, you can quantify that. Yes, that's the correct answer. Experiments are very difficult to measure on outcomes, on learning effects and all this, and that's probably why it's really slowly happening. And I definitely agree for this kind of bringing further of all various disciplines together. And then experimenting on solutions and looking what could work. And like in IVI, we call them kind of little real world examples, communities, and bringing the right people together and starting to think about co-creating about solutions, because I probably believe we need that. And I liked your statements, citation. And when I looked at the years, they're quite, it's there, but somewhere we forgot that maybe over time, certain things, what we actually had also in science on learning and all this, we had a lot there, but somehow we are very narrowed and maybe forgot things.
And with the other part of the quantity, that we nowadays, quality is identical to quantity. The story of the influencer is a disaster. So nowadays, the great writers are the journalists, not the academics. So the journalist is easier to sell copy. And then they say, but the academics will write in difficult way. So that they replace hard quoted phrases with humble, but in this way, so the humanities goes down, not go up. The outcome is the great instauration by Francis Bacon. Today, almost nobody can read this. Is quality difficult? Quality is not quantity. There is not an identity. Maybe sometimes quantity and quality go together, but oftentimes quantity and quality they don't go together. And sciencepreneurship is about quality. It's not about quantity.
Yes, the online community was a bit quiet so far.
I have something to contribute, or at least I think, because I think most of your things fall very much also on unbounded and bounded organizations. And what you have alluded to also in bringing entrepreneurship and science sort of into play. I mean, we're talking about a business part of entrepreneurship, coming from that sort of school. Science is obviously coming from science faculty in that sense. So when we're talking about bounded and unbounded organizations, we're talking about also, if we bring the economy also into place, and I'm talking about more from my realization now in writing my thesis, and I will get to that part also now. But I want to talk about the bounded and unbounded organizations. What you also referring to is taking the economy into context and having a company. The companies are all going for the profit, and you know what the bottom line is going to be. And so everybody is basically all revering their companies really along that sort of context. And that is how everything has always been in a sort of a bounded organization, because everybody sort of flock together in doing and wanting to do the same thing. And we need to break away from that sort of thing. And I think this is what you're also trying to say one needs to do in that sort of way. But it is exactly what Marcus is saying, and some of the points that Paul has made also. How do we get to do that? And that's the one part of getting to bounded and unbounded organizations. And then my second point, my thesis, my executive MBA is around leadership as a practice. And what I have seen also in terms of your presentation, you talk about, you know, sort of bringing things together instead of people sort of driving an organization and being the influential person in the organization and leading the organization. You're saying we need to do it together as a collective. And that is what my study is all about. So thank you very much for bringing this into context as well, because it brings a lot of insight also to my study.
The bound is good, is a very great generator of inequalities. Yeah. Okay. You listen to this. As far as I know, by education, I am a macroeconomist. So I was in some way educated in economic modeling, forecasting at the OECD.
Yeah.
But I think even so far, in the business studies, companies are studied as functions. Human resources, silos. Each silo, sometimes they communicate. Yeah. But like a human body, company is a living organism made by cell. Non-knowns, non-unknowns, unknowns, core competence, potential invaders. If you reason this way, you don't fall into the mouse trap of the identity between product and function. So imagine, I make a refrigerator, and in my mind, the refrigeration, the refrigerator are the same thing, not at all. The products are not the same thing. If you think in terms of bound organization. So that what I do, I go to all the exhibitions about the refrigerator. But one day a guy discovered the refrigeration can be done another way around. And the big issue is that once the very innovative tool appear, idea, is like an ugly duck. Is bad. My grandmother used to say, the first TV, oh, beautiful, it's a famous radio Fonola. Much better to buy a new radio than to buy the TV, which is difficult to listen. So the same applies to the steamboat against the sailing boat. So that the bound organization, the hierarchy, are source of big mistakes and large inequalities. Metrics. Yeah. Metrics are important, but can be even changed, innovated. Now, the genuine progress indicator, Nobel Prize in economics, they will raise the issue with GDP. But so far, during the virus, the pandemic, nobody has raised the word why we are this plan, European plan, public money, with the magic GDP rather the genuine progress indicator, which was an alternative indicator. No, silent. Nobody said the one word. In Brussels, the tyrant is the GDP. So that if I replace the woods with the Airbnb, the GDP goes up, I get much more money.
So why are they not changing it with sustainability, circular economy, all these green topics from the EU? So GDP is probably not a good measure for this. So and they're not changing it. Like, yeah,
it's not good. It's not a good measure at all. If they talk about the environment, the nature, the contradiction. Otherwise, there is nowadays the other economists, they begin to say how we can calculate the tree which save the good air or the pollinator. Nowadays, there are people, scientists, who are studying the language of the animals and the language of the trees. The famous Italian for the language of the trees. We call these objects or animals are not objects or animals, are species, natural species. The sciencepreneurship, in principle, should change this landscape, revolving this landscape.
Piero, in the macroeconomic sphere, then, is there anybody trying to propose, a new measure, a new metric? Macroeconomics.
In macro.
Yeah, so that's your background, right? So is there anybody trying to researching or trying to propose an alternative to GDP?
There are economists who have strongly raised the point of the limits of the GDP, but their voice is not listened.
Yeah, but you can criticize and you can say it's not a good one, but is anybody proposing an alternative?
No, the alternative has been proposed.
Yeah.
For instance, you can take a look on internet at the genuine progress indicator. There are always alternatives, but the big decision makers, the status quo is a pillow where you can sleep very quiet. Try to change the status quo. Innovation is not incrementation, it's not a big mistake. By definition, each and every day we try to increment ourselves. We wash our face, for instance. Innovation is about changing. And once there is a need for changing, once there is a situation in which we are going against the nature, the CO2 is a tremendous trigger of destruction, process of destruction of the humanity. And the alternative is the jumping in another planet. Okay, so that again, the GDP, with Elon Musk, the GDP goes up.
I think we have one question online here, Piero, as well. Gabriel, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, Piero. Really enjoyed your presentation. It occurs to me from what you're saying that the problem is a temporal problem, and it's about moving from one economy type to another and overcoming the inertia of profit or inertia of avarice, which the current economy is all bought into. At what point, like having looked at previous economies, moving from the industrial age into the information age, how long do you think it's going to be until it becomes more profitable to be an economy that is focused on balance rather than one that's focused on GDP and consumption?
You say about the short term and longer term.
Well, do you see an inflection point or
How long time it takes?
when it will change? Yeah.
You see, depends on the culture of the ecosystems. The ecosystems make a difference. There are new academies around the world. In my view, for instance, as far as I am a testimony, IVI is a new way of looking at these issues. But the ecosystems, the new ecosystems, they need the time. It's a longer-term process. And not so oftentimes the politicians, they launch a new project and they want the result after tomorrow, say after tomorrow to be elected again. Whereas, I give you an example, for many years, I have been an advisor, European advisor for the incubators in Europe. An incubator takes time, like a baby. It's a long-term and painful process. If you don't think in terms of a longer term, if we give money only for the short term, we are wrong. Never we can reach this. Never we can reach this result. Even I give you I live in Bologna, in the area of Ducati, in the area of Ferrari, you know, Ferrari, Ducati. Even these types of a company, they took decades to launch something which was successful. Even though nowadays, say, I am not so in favor of these types of a company, luxury and so on and so forth. The economic process are not a short-term process. The real economic process are longer-term process, are painful. And they need creativity, fantasy from once you are very, very young. But the issue is, till 5 years old, you live of a fantasy. Once you go inside the primary school, you lose your fantasy. What is important are the questions, the answer to the questions, and the knowledge map. In the knowledge map of yesterday, I use the metaphor of a Ptolemies. Okay, what's happened in Ptolemies time? Vertical specialization. We go inside the pit of knowledge called Ptolemeo, and we go down at the bottom of the pit, of the well of that knowledge. We know everything about Ptolemies, but Ptolemies, unfortunately, was not right, was wrong. And we have missed our specialization. So the specialization is necessary in some way, but also should be challenged and even defeated. Otherwise, like in the vignette, in the cartoon I show you, what's happened, that we nurture the artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence overcome the human intelligence, a paradox. So a new human species, So I am in favor of spending money, public money, for long-term process, which should be some way monitored, of course, with the monitoring, but with a long-term view, not with a short-term view.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much.
And sorry, I missed a point. A famous venture capitalist, Dorio, written Doriotti at the end. Dorio was the inventor of the venture capital, at least in the States. It was in Boston, was a French in Boston, was in the defense industry. He invented the venture capital. He said, spending money in venture capital is like growing up a baby. You need the time for a baby to pass from year 1 to year 5 and so on and so forth. So, and Dorio will invest money in longer-term process. Nowadays, longer-term processes are the golden rule of the venture capital. I have some doubt.
Yeah.
I see speculation. I don't see longer-term processes.
Very good. I think that's it, guys. We'll have to leave it there. I think we're just after 2. But Piero, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you very, very much, Piero, for being here today. Thanks to
Bye-bye.
everyone online for joining. Please join us next week where we continue our coffee talks with Mansour Ahmed from IVI. So we look forward to that. So please join and get in touch if you have any questions here at IVI or for Piero. And we'd be happy to continue any conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.